if you picked up the New York Times today, excuse me, the Washington Post today, you might want to flip to the editorial section. Their writer, who's he's writing columns regularly now, James Comey, go there and basically called out anyone that had the audacity to want to have answers to what happened to launch the investigation into the Trump campaign.
He said, go ahead, investigate the investigators if you must. He also said this: there was no corruption, there was no treason, there was no attempted coup. Those are lies, and dumb lies at that. There were just good people trying to figure out what was true under unprecedented circumstances.
Dumb lies.
Yeah. Well, joining us now to react is counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway. So, Kellyanne, good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning.
Nothing to see here if you open the pages of the Washington Post.
Methinks he doth protest too much. So there sounds like there's panic in the world of Jim Comey. Who cares what he thinks? We said no collusion for 2 years, and they couldn't take us at our word. We had to waste $40 million of taxpayer money, 22 months, 500 witnesses, 2,800 subpoenas, and the list goes on and on, 1.4 million documents to come up with what we said all along: no collusion. I stood here many times and said that as the campaign manager, no collusion. And yet we're just supposed to read Jim Comey in a friendly, favorable news outlet say no corruption. So let's find out. Those who said transparency, facts first, accountability, let's have it now. I can probably come up with $35 million and I got 22 months. How about you guys?
Kellyanne?
I can wait for 500
You can
witnesses.
find 17 lawyers. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is, I really resent him saying just good people trying to get to the truth. We already know that Andy McCabe, his number 2, lied. We already know that Jim Comey's a liar and a leaker. We already know that they wrote books that basically are on the fiction list. We already know how much the texters, of course, were making fun of Trump voters. Peter Orr, Nellie Orr, all these folks, we know the dossier was discredited. And I will tell you something. On January 11th, 2017, Donald Trump, the president-elect, held a press conference in the atrium of Trump Tower. You may remember this. And he took questions from basically every outlet, almost every outlet. That night, I went on TV on a different network and told that network, your reporting on what Jim Comey told the president is wrong. They kept relying upon and printed articles about this 2-page summary. There was no such thing given to the president. He was briefed orally by Comey. They think people just presumed, given the benefit of the doubt, people just presumed that President-elect Trump had been briefed the same way President Obama and Vice President Biden had been briefed on the phony fake dossier. That is just not true. And they've admitted that. That's been admitted since. So we have so many inconsistencies and flat out lies from these known leakers who have lied under oath to Congress and elsewhere that it's worth investigating. I would just ask them, what are you so afraid of?
Right. Kellyanne, I want to get to the border. It's vitally important, but I'm going to ask the question he would ask you right now. And this is what some have said. If they wanted to affect the Trump campaign, they would have announced in the fall, we're investigating Donald Trump and his campaign for possible collusion with Russia, but they didn't. They waited till after the election. Do they deserve credit for that?
No, because President Obama should have informed the new team on the campaign. Somebody should have told us that intelligence had made very clear to them that Russia was trying to interfere in the campaign. They ignored it. They didn't act on it because they wanted the woman who lost the race, whose name I never say anymore, lest I be accused of still saying her name, her. They thought she'd win, and in fact, they wanted her to win. And so, and look, Jim Comey, I think Ari Fleischer had it right in your last hour. Jim Comey is known as a grandstander and a showboat. It very much bothered the president to have somebody as the head of the FBI who acted thusly. He fired him for other reasons, obviously, and he didn't need any reason to fire him, but he had plenty. But the fact is that he put everybody in a very bad position when he usurped the responsibility, the duties, the rights of Attorney General Loretta Lynch and the Department of Justice. It was, read the Rosenstein memo from May of 2017, still one of my favorite documents ever, because they lay out that he actually said people of differing views all agree on one thing, that Comey had mishandled the Clinton investigation by running in front of the cameras. And so, no, I'm not going to give them credit, since we already know people were running around trying to put their thumbs on the scale. And by the way, so we know a little bit. We don't know everything. I think what happened after Trump was elected and during transition is probably what intrigues me most, which is after they were shocked and the world was shocked that Donald Trump was elected and they were trying to undo the election or redo the election, And of course they can't do that, but they were trying to declassify stuff or lower the classification. That's something we need to know.
We wanted to talk immigration with you. What's going on down there? Because we're hearing reports that we know our Border Patrol agents, they can't do their jobs on the border because they're helping all these migrants with their health and getting them sodas and bottles and whatnot. Now we're hearing they're going to put those border agents back in their places and then hire babysitters for these migrants. What's the story there?
Let me just clarify, Ainsley, when I just said that's right, I wasn't agreeing with the part that they can't do their jobs. I'm agreeing with the part that their jobs are being diverted into trying to care for these infants and young children and making sure that people are safe, which is what they're doing. And people don't see enough of that footage, I think. Look, the President Trump is on the right side of this because Bloomberg had this ridiculous report that 1.7 million miles of wall was being built. It's 120. I can list it all out for you, what pieces, the primary walls, the secondary walls that are being replaced because they must, that are being freshly built, Yuma, San Diego, Rio Grande Valley. People just have to go and look at the facts. We need more people at the border. When the president unveiled his new immigration plan a couple weeks ago and he talked about full and final border security, he made very clear that we didn't listen to politicians on Capitol Hill to put together this immigration plan. We listened to the brave men and women at the border. They are overwhelmed and they're being diverted from protecting the border into providing, frankly, health and wellness. So we're trying to move people down there who can fulfill those duties. We have a new acting director of ICE, and I think it's incredibly important to recognize all these Democrats have said, abolish ICE, get rid of ICE. ICE alone, forget about everybody else, ICE alone interdicted enough fentanyl last year to have killed all of us coming over the border and through other ports of entry. They are trying to stop the flow of drugs, stop the flow of people, and trying to help folks who make it to the border.
I know the president said, I will not legislate if you're going to investigate. But it's been brought up that Bill Clinton, while he was being investigated by Newt Gingrich and for impeachment, they were still pushing forward with infrastructure plans specifically. Will the president be open while they investigate, because they're not going to stop, to doing anything at the border, number one, because the comprehensive plan you guys introduced is not going to get passed, even though you'd like it to, in 2019, or infrastructure? It will be open to a reapproachment.
Sure, well, we're ready for that. We can work with them on infrastructure, drug pricing, these bipartisan issues. But the president's point last week was an important one, and I was in there. Nancy Pelosi was very embarrassed in front of her colleagues. She can say whatever she wants, but he took the case right to her and said, why an hour before coming here would you go in front of the microphones and say the president is engaged in a cover-up? He said, I don't do cover-ups. You know that. Why would you do that? Why couldn't she just walk by the microphones? Is anybody capable of that these days? Why couldn't she say, I'll get back to you this afternoon and we'll give you an update on this morning's Democratic meeting and also our progress with the president on infrastructure? She made a different choice. She cannot control her temper about Donald Trump, and she cannot control her caucus. There's a lot of pressure from those new members to impeach, investigate. I think some of the older guard are saying, hold on, we're not there yet. She said that herself. But of course the president is ready to work on drug pricing. He's working without them. We have the lowest prescription drug prices in decades, and he will continue to do that. But I want to say something. Bill Clinton was guilty. He had no choice. Donald Trump has been exonerated from collusion and obstruction in the Mueller report and through the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General's conclusions. Bill Clinton was guilty. He lied under oath on August 17th, 1998. I watched it. He was having a sexual relationship with an intern steps away here in the Oval Office. And he also wasn't being investigated by Newt Gingrich. He was being investigated by Ken Starr, by an independent counsel.
All right. Kellyanne, good point. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Appreciate you joining us.
Kellyanne.
Take care.